and welcome back. On this next module video, our research group's Ekaterina Kovaleva will be talking about e-commerce and marketing. So when we have our first product, then we need to think about things like where do we want to sell our things, what sort of things are related to e-commerce, and what sort of marketing image or what sort of gender biased imaging we are facing on each of our everyday lives. So without further ado, let's move on to the presentation video.
Hello everyone! Today I want to tell you about economic factors, pitfalls, hidden costs of engineering, understanding your customer and market, discrimination and gender issues, and marketing. And I want to start with startup failure. Up to 75% of startups fail. Why? Well, money is always a problem. Firstly, it's difficult to raise enough initial funding. And startup waste too much money at the early stages. They doesn't begin with the best people or produce a product that doesn't cover the needs of customers. Ambitiously hiring too many people at the initial stages, often with wrong skills. They doesn't produce a working product in a timely manner or are not able to monetize the idea. And obviously they could be beaten out by competitors. While entering the market, you should question yourself, are you sure your idea is even any good? Many successful ideas are disruptive to an existing market or create a new market that was not seen before. For example, TV disrupts TV market and creates DVR market. Netflix disrupts TV and DVR markets. Facebook, Twitter disrupts online social networking. Foursquare creates location-based check-in ad market, and Uber takes over taxi business. The first step is to conduct market research to validate your idea, to understand what are you going to produce. Does it have revenue potential? In other words, can it make money? Identify the future perspectives. You need to show to investors that your idea is good. People want it because it solves their problem. The idea is profitable and has growth potential. Your team is skilled and strong enough to beat competitors. You have legal right to produce a product and you are open to suggestions. Here is a graph of how the startup's revenue comes through the time. The value of debt is a common term in the startup world, referring to the difficulty of covering the negative cash flow in the early stages of a startup. The main funding resource during this period is business angels who are ready to finance risky projects. When a company's revenue starts to exceed its expenses, it begins to attract venture capital funds, and is also an interesting target for mergers and strategic alliances. The next stage of startup's development is initial public offering, that is, the first issue of shares on the stock market, with subsequent offerings. It is very important to remember that development is not all the costs of the company, but quite the opposite. On software product, as much as 93% of product costs have been reported to be generated by maintenance and development while in maintenance. In other words, development after launch. This is also a strategy in software industry. Later we're going to discuss the example of free-to-play games and their cycle. Rule of thumb is, it costs €1 to come up with an idea and proof of concept. It costs €10 to test and develop product from that idea. It costs €100 to maintain and commercially support the product through life cycle. More interesting facts. Looking at the graph, we understand that at each subsequent stage of the project, the relative cost of the era increases, and the most dangerous is an inability to deliver the product to the customer. The industry observations showed that more than half of the software projects fail to reach sufficient quality, in budget, in time, with the intended features. Survey in 2016 on software project in industry has shown 28% successes, 23% abandoned mid-projects, 49 partial successes. Let's look at the case of a normal startup game development team. They produce games for smartphones and tablets. The team usually consists of 2 or 4 people: designer, programmer, and artist. They work as owners without receiving a salary. Everybody does everything, but everyone has one or few particular specialties. They offer a simple game design to get something published, because big players only interested in teams that have proof that they can deliver projects. Biggest expenses tools: marketing. Sound effects, secondary 3 models, and music are outsourced. 3 most important problems named by the startups are money, money, and money. From the previous slide, we have understood that startups need money. Unfortunately, women experience additional difficulties in finding investments. One of the reasons is the lack of female board members in investment funds. But what can be done? You need to be confident in your idea. For that purpose, make proper calculations of the economic efficiency of the project and prepare a proof of concept. There are also subsidized programs that encourage tech startups led by women. How does business logistics work? In the traditional model of game distribution, developers receive only 10% of the earnings on their products. The main part goes to the publisher, distributor, and retailer, which are engaged in the creation of packaging, production of physical copies, and distribution in retail stores. Fortunately for developers, there is digital distribution. In this case, the team receives 70% of the revenue from the games, if it doesn't spend part of it on marketing. About 30% are taken by e-marketplaces. Then the game is either bought by customers or downloaded to play in the free-to-play model. Let's discuss 2 models of game monetization and start with the pay-to-play format. Profit for non-marketed game released at App Store is 74 euros. Profit for marketed game is 25,000 plus euros. Worth of being in top 25 is 5,000 euros per day. Mobile games take 3 to 6 months to make. 90% of sales are happening within 1 month from release. By default, it's international business. Free-to-play models change everything. And what about free-to-play model? Marketing is basically purchasing users. For each X euros spent, we get Y new users, the people who download and start a game at least once. Out of those, up to 14% of users might play a game more than once. 95% of players never pay for anything. 4% of players might buy something once or twice, or pay for something extra. 1% of players are the whales. They provide constant stream of income, even thousands of dollars per user. Don't forget about money from maintenance, continuous development of new content, and live ops. Here is an illustration of 200 players in the free-to-play model. The blue dots show those who have played the game at least once. The green dots show those who have continued to play. The yellow players made a one-time purchase within the game, and the red one is the regular buyer, the way we have mentioned in the previous slide. We also have those users who saw the advertisement but didn't click it or didn't install your game, or installed it and never bothered to try it out. The main task of the team, with the help of additional development and marketing, is to transfer one category of players to a more involved one. And when we talk about marketing, we can't help but touch on such an important topic as gender-oriented marketing. It's not a secret that marketers use gender as an element of determining the target audience. Gendered marketing can work for certain products. Nobody complains about marketing vitamins for women and vitamins for men, because that makes sense. But in many cases, companies might actually be depressing their demand for products. Marketing should be based on the interests of the target audience, not on its gender. For clarity, I want to draw an example of the harmful impact of gender-based marketing in the game industry. Video game advertising is a case of the tech sector offering its products to the general public, including children. A lot of early computers were used for playing games. Those games tended to be more aimed at boys and men, so it was easy for boys to get a leg up in that area through gaming. The Apple personal computer was marketed specifically to boys, as were a whole range of other consoles. This gave rise to male computing culture. As a result, a 1945 study reported that 73% of men used a computer on a weekly basis, compared to 45% of women surveyed. As a result, this led to the experience gap. In a study conducted in 1995, it was found that among first-year computer science students at Carnegie Mellon University, 30% of male respondents passed the Advanced Placement Computer Science exam, meaning they could skip the introductory level programming class. None of the first-year women achieved the same result. In 1984, 37% of computer science graduates were women. But those numbers began to drop dramatically. By 2016, that number had been whittled down to 18%. Thus, due to the limitation of marketing campaigns to gender stereotypes, we got an unbalanced ratio of men and women in computer science. And it's strange that the game industry is still not focused enough on the female audience, despite the fact that in 2020 women accounted for nearly 41% of all gamers in the United States, and in Asia, which accounts for 48% of the world's total gaming revenue, women now make up to 40 to 45% of Asian gaming population. It means that half of the gamers are women. However, female characters' representation in video games is lacking, with only 5% of video games showcasing female protagonists. Female characters are often objectified and hypersexualized. Also, female characters are often portrayed as a love interest, innocent or needing to be rescued by a male character. Thus, female players do not associate themselves with the characters and feel the pressure of stereotypes. An additional fact why women should be in the top of interests of developers is fellow mobile game developers. A nice statistic is that women also spend more time playing games. On the right side of the picture are the game's genres. You can see that male and female preferences are different, and what types of games should you pay attention to in order to attract a female audience. And if you think that the use of AI advertising will reduce bias and determine the target audience by interests, then I would like to discuss an equally hot topic concerning the problems of inequality. Facebook's ad serving algorithm is blamed for discriminating by gender and race. Even if an advertiser is well-intentioned, the algorithm still prefers certain groups of people over others. It was found that posting for preschool teachers and secretaries was shown to a high fraction of women, while posting for janitors and taxi drivers was shown to a high proportion of minorities. Ads about homes for sale were shown to more white users, while ads for rentals were shown to more minorities. During another study on AI, which produced semantic analysis, it was found that the words female and woman were more closely associated with arts and humanities occupation and with the home. Meanwhile, male and man were more closely associated with math and engineering professions. That is, the algorithm, which we consider more objective, actually doesn't cope with the task. This problem is actively being solved. Specialists conduct an audit of AI training and check the objectivity of the algorithm before using it. Once again, it's very important to fight against stereotypical thinking and direct your marketing campaigns based on the deep knowledge of your target audience. Let's summarize this lecture. We now know how to allocate costs in IT startups, paying attention on software maintenance after launching it. Which funding resources are open to young companies? that is business angels, venture capital, and mergers and IPO. We analyzed the game distribution models, the traditional and digital ones. We have covered pay-to-play and free-to-play game monetization. And finally, we have also discussed marketing and gender issues related to it. That is all for today. I wish you good luck and thank you for your attention.